Hi there, my name is Nicole Kiebert with the Moose Show Journey to Hope team, and this is Voices of Hope.
Hi, my name is Angelena. I am 28. I'll be 29 on the 27th. I'm here today to share my story about my struggle with a generalized anxiety disorder and how that affected my life and in turn inspired me to become a mental health advocate. So when I was a kid, I had a very short, almost a temper, but I would just get irritable very quickly and not know how to process that. And internally, it would feel very heavy right here. And that's how I describe it to people, is just feeling like there's something on your chest and there's this turmoil going on, and it makes everything else in your environment really hard to process and regulate. I know that now, but when I was growing up, I didn't know what was happening, and I didn't know why I felt the way I felt and why I was worrying all the time, why I felt guilty all the time, why I felt like I needed everybody else to be happy first versus myself, and how that in the end caused a mental breakdown for myself. So when I was 17, there's a lot of things going on in my life that caused me to feel like I just wanted a break. And looking back now, of course, those things that were going on are completely irrelevant to my adult life, but at the time they were my world and they meant everything to me. I ended up taking too much codeine cough syrup that I was prescribed for a cold. And I didn't want to die per se, but I wanted everything just to stop. And I wanted to wake up and everything be better. When I was growing up, my mom always said, suicide is not the answer. There's always help. There's always a way out. And as a 17-year-old, I still heard and remembered that message. So after that happened, I did end up going and getting help from a guidance counselor at school. I didn't tell anybody what happened, and I didn't tell anybody how I was feeling, and that was really heavy. So as I went through my lifespan and continued on to college, and that still weighed on me heavily, and it was still there. I went through a lot of friends because if somebody did something to upset me or that I felt like they betrayed me in any way, I would just cut them off from my life completely. And I didn't like conflict. And when I say I still don't like conflict, and I just couldn't deal with it because there was so much going on with me internally that I just did not have the space to process conflict, to work through conflict. So I would just bleh, and it was done. So as I got into my early 20s, it really started to affect my self-esteem. And at this point, I've gone through college, I've taken courses on mental health disorders, and it's still really not clicking in for myself of what's going on. So it caused a lot of just heaviness. And when I think back now about how I felt, one, I wouldn't trade how I feel now for anything. And two, I just wish someone would have helped me. I wish somebody would have stepped in and said, this, what you're feeling and how you're dealing with it isn't right. And we should maybe look into that. And nobody ever did. And a lot of that, I think, was to do with people just don't know. And I'm a very friendly, outgoing, bubbly person. And even now, when I disclose that I have a general anxiety disorder or that I'm feeling really anxious or whatever, people are always like, really? You don't seem like the type. You don't seem like you do. You just seem so happy-go-lucky. And I'm like, yeah, I fake it real well. high functioning anxiety is a thing. And most people don't know that I have anxiety until I disclose that, because I just hide it well. And I hid it throughout my whole adolescence into my early 20s. And by my mid-20s, actually when I turned 26, it was coming up to my birthday, and things just really started to escalate. There was a lot of change going on in my life, and I was having trouble processing it and dealing with it. And I started having panic attacks. And for those who haven't had a panic attack, it's terrifying. It feels like your body is pretty much turning on you. I felt like my throat was closing, that I couldn't breathe. I was hyperventilating, like I was crying, I was breathing really quickly. I felt like I couldn't slow down. It went on for probably 10 to 15 minutes. And that was the first time that I ever had a panic attack. And I realized at the time, like, okay, I think that was a panic attack. That's not good. That was really hard to go through, and I know that it's not something that I should be going through regularly. So what do I need to do to get myself back on track? And try as I might, I really did try. I knew of the things that, people tell you to do, like meditating, journaling, taking a break, all the kind of things that I knew and that I learned about. So, but I still wasn't associating what I was feeling and going through as anxiety. And I just kept having more and more panic attacks, and everything that I was doing to get it together, as I said, it just wasn't working. And my significant other at the time was very concerned about me and saw the very fast personality and mood changes that I was experiencing, and I literally just could not cope with anything, any sort of stress. I would just shut down. I could not regulate what was going on in my environment and what was going on in my body. So as January kind of went on, and I knew in the back of my mind that this wasn't healthy and that there was something wrong, I at the time thought it was just stress. And I did end up going to my doctor, and when I described to her everything that I was feeling, she said, I think that you have a generalized anxiety disorder. And I was kind of like, well, I don't sit at home and worry all the time. Like, I don't. And I started thinking of all these like stigmatized symptoms that people associate with anxiety. And I was like, no, I don't have anxiety. But as I started really reflecting on not just where I was now, but where I had come from, and the way that, the heaviness and the turmoil just kept escalating, I was like, well, maybe. And at this point, I was still kind of in denial about the fact that there might be something going on that wasn't just a quick, simple fix. So my doctor prescribed me. She actually opened this book and started explaining all of these medication options to me. And I knew a little bit about SSRIs. I had worked with people in the past that had been on them. And to me, that was something really scary. I was like, I don't want that. So I ended up going with an SRNI, or an SS. I don't remember the correct acronym at the time, or now. But I chose to go on venlafaxine, which is also known as Effexor. And it took me, I remember it was over Easter, so it was around March, April-ish when I had these medications. And I remember thinking, I don't need these. Like, I don't want to take medication. Like, I don't want this. This isn't right. And it took me 5 days to take this medication. And it took my best friend just saying to me, like, just take it. If it doesn't help, you can stop. And I was like, okay. And I knew, I was educated enough to know that, these medications take time to kick in. I knew that it might not be the right medication for me. I knew that this might be the start of a very long journey to figure out what medication worked for me. So I started taking the Effexor, and I'm not kidding you, within probably 2 weeks, I felt this like release and this like lightness that I had never felt before in my life. And I was calm. I was able to communicate. I was able to take stressors and work through them. And I started to be able to identify, okay, why am I worrying? Why do I feel anxious right now? Why is my brain telling me that this is end all be all, when in all reality, it's a small thing that I can easily navigate through. So I started like pulling in different what's the word? I'm blanking.
Are you looking for like resources or
like something like that? Yeah.
Or like what are they? I use it all the time too. It's funny when you do that. Tools.
Maybe tools. Yeah, I was gonna say maybe I'll just use tools. I know there's a different word that I'm looking for, and I'll think about it like an hour from now, but like whatever. So I started thinking about different tools that I knew helped me work through that. And part of that was because my doctor did refer me to a therapist, and I did do therapy. And I know there's also a big stigma around therapy and how people say, you know, I don't need therapy. And when I was in my early 20s, I did do therapy for 2 years for a different reason. But I was like, I don't need therapy again. Like, I already did therapy. And how could it possibly help me? But I went and I did what I needed to do. But it did help. And it helped me identify different tools that I can use in my life to help me, one, de-escalate that anxiety and those anxious feelings, and two, help me navigate to a solution. So I just kept adding different tools to my tool belt, and I started to understand and know my body and realize what I needed in different moments. So it was probably 3 to 4 months went by, and I realized that some of those really heavy, anxious feelings were coming back. And I was having a lot of trouble regulating what I was feeling and what was going on in my environment. So I ended up going back to my doctor, and we decided that it was time to increase my medication. This time, I did not hesitate. I just did what she told me to do, and within a couple of weeks, I did feel better. So that was 2018, going into 2019. And in 2018, I had somebody die of suicide that I grew up with. And made me decide that I needed to do something more, and I needed to be a better advocate, one, for myself, and two, for others. So I started my own Facebook group where I offered just a place for anybody to come and connect and network and just be yourself and learn from my experiences and my struggle. And there's been people who have come to me and said, you know, if it wasn't for you and you sharing your story, I wouldn't have gone for help. I wouldn't have taken that medication. And I always said that if I can save one person from sharing my story and advocating for better mental health services and mental health awareness in our community, then that's enough. If I can just save one person. And there's been multiple people that have, you know, gone through the process of getting help and later thanked me for sharing my story. And it really made me realize that sharing my story, one, helps break down that stigma of mental health, and two, it encourages others that you're not alone and things do get better. So part of why I'm here today is I want you to hear my story, and I want you to know, and I want you to hear that I know it sucks, and I know it's heavy, and it feels like it's impossible, but with the right people and the right resources, you can climb this mountain and you can overcome what is going on. My story is just one of many, but I need you to hear that it does get better and that there's help out there, and you're not alone. I think that my journey has really brought me to a place where I'm better at identifying for myself when I'm struggling. And even though I still, sometimes it takes me a while to catch on what's going on, I still have a better knowledge and awareness of myself, of when I need to go get help, or maybe when I do need that medication change, or is there something else going on? I recently went to my doctor in September and I said, I'm feeling really good. I'm in a good space. I would like to try decreasing my medication. And so we did. And by December of last year, I was like, okay, I feel heavy and I feel just almost nothing. Like I just feel not motivated. I feel lazy. I don't want to do things. I'm procrastinating more. I just want to lay in bed and watch movies. Like, what is going on? Why am I feeling like this? And I reflected on, what's going on. And I realized that, last year in 2019, I went through a period of depression, which was the original reason why I increased my medication to begin with. So I'm like, but I don't feel this way in the summer. I don't feel this way when I can be outside, when I can be around people, when I can do the things that I need to do and that I like to do. So I just went back to my doctor at the end of December 2020 and said, I think that I need to go back onto that dose of medication because I feel like I have seasonal depression. And I feel like during this time of year, it gets really, really hard for me to deal with my anxiety and process that. And it also just is hard for me to be a human. I just would rather isolate myself and mope. And that's a very, I guess, can be a very stigmatizing word. But in my brain, that was the best way to describe what I was doing. So I don't mean that in a condescending way, but that is a way that I just described how I was feeling. So I just recently upped my medication to help myself deal with that seasonal depression. And my doctor is probably the best doctor ever. And she is so real. And she's like, I know that you have that, but you have to come to terms, but that's what's going on with you. And I'm always like, yeah, okay, I get it. So that one, my journey has given me the tools and the resources and the knowledge to be able to do that, to be able to help myself and to be able to identify when things may not be going good. And that's it is a really hard skill to learn and to become aware of. And it takes practice. But if I could give anybody any advice, it's really to know yourself, to be aware of how your body feels, how your mind feels, and know when that's your baseline versus when things maybe aren't going normally. I don't like the word normal, but we'll use it in this case. I think that my journey has inspired me to be a voice for those who haven't quite found theirs yet, and to advocate and push for better mental health services. It's inspired me to speak openly about my mental health and to share my story with others, which again has helped others realize and begin their own journey with dealing with their mental health. I think that when it comes to mental health awareness in our community, it's tough because we're combating a system that isn't quite ready and set up for mental health. So I think by being an advocate, speaking up, sharing your story, pushing for better services, participating in things in the community. You know, we have a wonderful Canadian Mental Health Association in our community. We've got Journey to Hope. We've got a lot of resources and that put on a lot of really great events that bring together a community of people who understand and need support in navigating those issues. And that's just a small piece of the things that we can do for our community. Speaking up, reaching out to others who you know are struggling. I know it's hard and it's not always an easy conversation, but if it's one thing that I've learned is it's okay to just be blunt. And, you know, if you suspect that somebody is not dealing well, and asking, you know, are you feeling suicidal? Do you think that this might be anxiety? Do you think that this might be depression? You know, offering those prompts to get people thinking about what's going on with themselves and encouraging them. You know, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist, but I'm here to support you and you're not alone. And I think that if more people could do that in our community and more people spoke up, that we would see a decrease in mental health crises. And I think if I could share a message of hope for anybody out there that's listening, is that you are not alone. There are so many people that are struggling, and it may not be the same way that you're struggling, but you are not alone. I know that it's hard, and I know that it can feel hopeless and dark and heavy, but there is a way out. There is a way for you to feel better, and you're not alone. You're never, ever alone.